I've got a huge smile on my face. If you can't hear it, well, if you can't see it, I hope you can hear it. And if you're watching on Apple, you're listening on Spotify. Well, when I say watching on Apple, you can't watch on Apple. You can watch on Spotify. You can watch on YouTube. You could tune into us live. But I tell you, my smile is from ear to ear because this is my brother from another mother. You hear that a lot from people, but I tell you, like, the connection point that I had with this man from the time that I met him was incredible. We got the chance to be able to meet at Secret Knock. He is the foremost expert on soil, and he is referred to as the soil king. This guy is an unbelievable human being, and he is all about making sure that you have the right soil to be able to grow the right crop. But he is a world authority at this, and we're going to be talking about it. It is incredible. He actually created, I'm going to read this because I don't want to get it wrong. He created Big Rootz Soil, which is a premium blend designed, blend of soil designed for optimal cannabis growth. Now, whenever people see me in the grocery store, they see me anywhere, they're like, oh, cool, I know what you're doing. And especially when I go in a pool and I open my eyes underwater, the scary thing is my eyes get a little bloodshot. And with the type of hair that I have, they always think that cannabis has become a part of my life and is a part of my life. And it hasn't been, although it was in my dad's life a huge amount. So my dad says thank you to you, Patrick. But I tell you, I get a chance to be able to spend time with the authority of soil, the soil king today, Mr. Patrick King. And it is my honor, my pleasure, and not only from the expertise that he has, but also from the heart that this man has for people and helping them to be able to grow. And so I cannot wait to share them with you. So why don't we get this party started?
Nothing more on my mind. I got two shines, so every day I grind. Work in the morning, work in the evening. We's achieving, cause we believing. It's for certain, we put the work in. We ain't stopped just because it's hurting. Right before your eyes, so it's coming to no surprise. The takeover is televised. Over and over and over again. Make no mistake, we continue to win. Defeat never know, cause I will not lose. They wanna mimic my moves, but can't walk in my shoes.
The man, the myth, the man with a name that is absolutely perfect for the moniker that he has, Mr. Patrick King, the Soil King. Welcome to the show, my man.
Thanks for having me, man. And the plot and the crowd goes crazy. Woo! Let's go.
The most handsome guy. I think there's a lot of people that are watching the show and going to watch a show or listen to the show, and we want to thank all of you that have partaken in your genius and not understood who they can thank. They felt that they should thank Sweet Baby Jesus or sometimes Bob Marley, but you are the reason for the highest levels. How did you get into this in the first place, Patrick?
I mean, first off, I'm built by my story. I'm hands down, I've adapted to all the lows in my life and made something of them. And my first memory, I mean, I'm just going to say it because who I am. My first memory were hands in the soil in a strawberry patch. My second memory was, not so, it's hard. It wasn't so good of a memory. Let's just put it like that. And so my life has always been one with Mother Nature. Right? It's always my serenity, my peace, my calmness, my go-to. There's two most common things in my life through my entire life. One is feet and hands in the soil, and the other one is peanut butter. So peanut butter's great, right? If you got healthy, clean, tested peanut butter, the Soil King back then didn't know anything about testing for contaminants on peanut butter. But today I eat really good peanut butter. But it's been a consistent thing because, I grew up, it's what I ate and water and lived on as a child. I had a very hard childhood coming up, and because of that, I am who I am today. So I embrace all of it, right? So Um, just so coming at the age of about 13 years old, 12 and 13 years old, I came home. I knocked on the door of my house because the door was locked, which it never was. I looked in the window, and inside the house there was no furniture. I went around the side of the house, looked in my bedroom, and my bedroom, there was no furniture in my bedroom. And at that point, I realized, I didn't really have a whole lot of people I can count on in my life going up to that point. And that decision of that day said, well, I'm gonna have to look out for myself. So I did that. And I lived in a fort on a creek, washed my hair in the creek, tried to get on my bike with no alarm clock and make it to school on time. Didn't turn out too well, but I knew how to grow cannabis as a young age because I was taught that as a real young lad, and I was able to start supporting myself
How
as
old,
a really young guy.
Patrick? How old were you when you say this? Like, how old were you when you learned how to be able to grow cannabis, and how did you learn it?
This is a great question, and I love this because I embrace all this. So those people out there are like, wow, but not really. When I was a young kid, I had an older sibling, and I hung around a lot of older school type of people. And if you guys remember and can relate to this, I'm 55 years old. If you can relate to this, and you probably can with your dad as well, Kelly, is there was zigzags were back then. The Led Zeppelin album covers, right? And seeded weed was the thing. So I was, 8 years old, and all these guys were breaking down their brick weed, and then they take the album cover and a zigzag, and they'd scrape it up, and the seeds would roll off and fall on the ground. Well, me being a guy that loved cultivating everything, I've been growing flowers, food since my first memory. I realized that there's value in those seeds if these guys are actually buying it, and so that's kind of where the concept of the entrepreneur I am today started at such a young age, and then you set forth from the age of about 8 to 11 years old. I was arrested for the first time for growing weed in a pine tree in my backyard, and
Well, Patrick,
and
Patrick, take us back before the 8-year-old. So we got exposed to it at the 8-year-old, but you were talking about your first memory with the in the strawberry field with the soil, things like that. Because when we talked at Vegas, this was interesting to me, so interesting because most of the time now people think of you, the soil king, creating the cleanest cannabis on the planet, all these things, but it started from a place where you knew that the soil had more to do with the crop than the actual seed itself.
Absolutely. I mean, that's been something that's been ingrained in me. I'm a fifth generation Johnny Appleseed. We can get into that. Like my history is crazy.
Yeah.
But when I was young, I understood. I grew everything. Like when people, it was my. I didn't have. There was a lot of problems surrounded me as a child, and my way to recluse and really adapt to feeling comfortable was to grow things and learning how to grow soil and the different concepts and the feeling of walking barefoot, at the age of 5 years old in with a electronic currency to the earth and God and all that to where I'm at today. I still take my shoes off and walk through the desert in Arizona. It's another consistency thing is hands in the soil. It's my serenity. It's my peace. It gives me everything I need in those most traumatic times of my life. That and faith are the two. Those are my two. Those are my soldiers, right?
So
Definitely.
when you take us to that time of 8, so you start to see the people with the Led Zeppelin, the zigzags, and that just brought back so many memories. Actually, I look like the zigzag guy today with this beanie on. Um,
This is
so
true.
so
This is true.
okay, so you have the zigzag dude, right? And then you're starting to see the seeds, right? You're starting to see the seeds
Yeah.
fall, and you're thinking, man, okay. At 11, you get popped for selling weed for the first time. Take us through that. How much were you selling by the time from the 8 to 11? What was the type of volume that you were dealing with, and then how did you get caught?
Yeah, I mean, I was selling. I'd roll up joints. I'd sell those, or I'd sell ace. Quarter ounces all the way to ounces. I'm just a child too. Like this is. If I look at my life with I'm a great father today, and my kids would never have to experience this stuff. But I'm telling you, I made the best out of what life was dealt to me, and I was able to, take care of myself. It was this entrepreneur brain. It either beats you to death and it works you, or you learn how to understand it, get along with it, and work it. And it's still today. It's the same concept of business strategy and practices that I have today as I had as a child. It was something I think that was ingrained in me. And just the thought of a child saying, well, these guys are fighting over this weed and they're dropping the seeds that made it on the ground. I'm going to be rich. I'm going to be rich. And I was rolling as a child, right, wrong, indifferent. That's what my life was. And I made something great out of it because of those times. I'm built by my story. Without those moments in my life, you and I wouldn't be talking here today.
Well,
We wouldn't be.
With those moments too, Patrick, like when you talk about it, so help us with the perspective of it. You're 8 years old. Tell me about the first time, because there's the concept, right? As an entrepreneur, we always, my wife said this, she said, you have an idea, then you rent the idea, then you own the idea. And then once you own it, there's very few people get to the expectation of the results of the idea. Right. And when you get to that expectation, that's where you live. Now, when you have a concept, you expect that it's going to work. But take us to the idea part. 8 years old, you see the seeds.
Yeah.
You don't know that it's actually going to sell to them. Right.
I mean, it was I was already growing flowers and strawberries and all this stuff and not making any money off it, and very successful at how beautiful my gardens were. Right?
Okay.
If these guys were paying for sunflowers, I'd have been rich. But no, they happened to be paying for brickweed back then, which wasn't, Colombian gold, which wasn't the greatest weed on the planet. And I figured I can do that, no problem. This is I've been doing this for years already. I was just a kid. I can do this. So it was very simple. The hard part going through those years was trying to learn about male plants and female plants, because there's no literature, this is all self-taught kind of, and so cross-pollination and all these things that came up. It took me a number of years to get out of that, to really realize that, I can change this and isolate the females from the males, and there was no cross-pollinating. But back then, seeds didn't matter because everything you bought had seeds in it. So it was an easy transformation. And then when I was living in Mill Creek up in Mission San Jose, Fremont, California, Ohlone College area, and I was going to Mission High, and I was selling. I'd roll doobies and I'd go sell them at the high school, and I'd show up before school. When I decided I was getting kicked out of school because I couldn't show up on time. I was a kid. I was really trying to be something like everybody else, and it just wasn't in the cards, which is a great thing. Again, built by my story. So for me to be able to make a living off that, and then immediately I went to work as a laborer on construction sites. That's what I did in high school. Is I went to a full-time job. I sold my hustle weed on the side.
Where did you grow it? Was it in the apartment? Did you have a little backyard? Because my aunt and uncle.
I had it on the side, outside, on the side of a hill up by Ohlone College, Mission Peak, in Fremont, California.
Was it your land, or did you just kind of almost hide it?
No, I didn't have any land back then. My fort wasn't on anybody. It was on somebody else's land. It was just,
How did you hide it?
I don't know whose land it was.
How'd you hide it? Because if somebody happened upon it, they might want to partake. You know what I'm saying?
That's happened before. So again, as a young kid, I learned diversification. Right? Instead of one patch, you gotta have at least three, because you're gonna get one by the cops, you're gonna get one by theft, and then you might be lucky and be able to keep one yourself. But I used to hike water bottles, jugs of water up the side of hill banks. I had trails that I would, as I left, I would brush back, so people couldn't really see them. I mean, and there's a lot of trails going through brushes for animals too. So that was always, that's the other thing, the animals, you get some deer stone on the side of a mountain by chewing on your plants too. But so you grow in areas that have lots of food for the native animals. Therefore, they don't really want the cannabis, but if it's the only green thing around, they're going to want that because there's water in it, right? So I learned that as a young age too.
So
Diversify and find your niche where it's at.
Patrick, we're going to do this like Pulp Fiction. So we're going to sometimes go to the end. We're coming back to the middle. We're going back to the first. I want to take me back to the first time that you got popped and you got arrested, because at 11 years old, a lot of people, if they get arrested for something, they're like, oh man, I got scared straight. But this was the beginning of you becoming the world authority on soil throughout. I mean, you're the most sought after guy in the world. At 11, were you thinking, man, I don't know? Or were you just like, nah, this is just a little bump in the road?
I mean, I don't think I'm the world authority in soil, but I have a team of people that I'm changing the world one plant at a time with responsible farming, and we're going to do some amazing work and already have. So yes, I love the title, but as a humble guy, right, there's a few of me out there, and we're on the same team. But the second part of your question is kind of really what happened. So in this particular, it was easier when I was younger, so I wasn't living in the creek up there yet. There was a huge pine tree that was on our property that I was living at. And in that pine tree, it was great platforms. So, I'm like, man, I can just like get some plywood. I can make some platforms. I can do some stuff. It's a perfect tree. And sure enough, I made different platforms all up in this tree, and I was growing weed in it. I was up there watering it one day, and one of the neighbors, I could see them, and I was being super quiet. And they're a little ways away, but I poured all the water in, and I remember the water was just rolling out, making noise out of a pine tree. So they looked over, and they seen me up in the pine tree, and I thought maybe they think I'm in a fort or whatever. But within a couple of weeks later, I had many cop cars arrested me, and I'm trying to. I remember when they showed up in my driveway, I hiked the tree. I knew it was up. And I like pulling these pots of plants down because I don't want to lose my harvest. It's right before harvest. This is I'm like, this is my babies. And I remember running across the back. I ran across the back field, over the fences, took off down the side streets, ended up at Mission Elementary School, ran around the corner, threw the plants on the top of the plant that I had. I had two plants. I threw them on the top of the roof. I ran across the back of the field, and the police were at the other end of the field, and they caught me. And then I wouldn't tell them what I did with the plants. I just played the fifth, and it was about 3 hours later after searching, one of them went up on the roof and they found him. But yeah, and that was I don't know, man. Was I scared? I don't really think so. I was too scared. I was more bummed, I mean, I had some things happen in my life that were scary, and I don't think, being arrested was near the scariest things that's happened to me in my life so far. But the dumbest thing and the biggest lesson that I learned is 1 year later, same tree, same police officer, same set of handcuffs. I got arrested 1 year later.
So Patrick,
and I learned, I'd never go back to your surroundings. Never revisit those. Learn from your mistakes.
Patrick, what were some of those things that you experienced early on that made this minimal?
I had a lot of things. It's hard to talk about stuff, but I'm I had adrenal hyperplasia. Adrenal hyperplasia as a child. Adrenal hyperplasia is when your adrenal glands grow. So when I was 6 years old, I had pubic hair started, right? So I was my height at the age, when I was 10 years old, I was already full grown man, right? So at the age of 11 years old or 8 years old, I looked like I was 15 or 16 already, which was really good when I started trying to buy beer because that worked really well for all my friends. Right? But so adrenal hyperplasia, I went to, I'm just going to throw it all out there. my mom was a beautiful soul, and I love my mom, and I took her out of this world, and I moved in her house. She died from cancer. I carried her out in hand. I made a cannabis strain called Mama's Boy, and she consumed that with cancer at the end and some chemo, but was coherent to just about the day that she died because of this. So I love my mom, so I never want to take anything away from her. She did the best she could with the mental illness and stuff that she had, right? So my mom isn't a bad. So most things when I say, I want to make sure that that forgiveness has been worked, and she's the greatest soul, and I can't wait to resurrect and be with her in heaven again, right? So, but it was very difficult. She didn't have a lot of money. My father wasn't, he was in the picture every once a month or something like that. I'd talk to him, but as in my mom being a single parent struggling, it was very difficult for her. She was drinking at that time. There was science of the mind religion just popped up, and they're teaching on science of the mind, and there was one of the biggest ones in Niles Canyon when that church really started coming to fruition, and that was an evil church. I'm just telling you right now, it was there was nothing good that came out of the child. The teaching was for my mom to give her all her money, and she got back an allowance, and that your children could raise, as long as you didn't discipline your children, they will raise themselves to be productive members of society. That was the teaching that was there, all the way to the memories of me. She would take me over to get babysat or hang out and get in their house, the pastor's house with his kids, and they take me in the basement and they put tarantulas all over me. And I was 6, 7 years old, and so this is, so the terrifying things. And then the adrenal hyperplasia, finding out about that. My mom didn't have any money for medical, so UC San Francisco picked me up as a research project. And so I used to have to spend weeks, and during Thanksgiving or during Halloween every year, I'd spend 2 to 3 weeks in UC Med Center where I was a guinea pig, where they would test me, they would do anything, they would fondle my genitals, like all kinds of bad memories that would come from this as a child. And the worst part about it is I was isolated and scared and alone, and I was victimized. For years, since 6 years old to about 8 or so, and 9, I started refusing it. They loaded me on heavy. I never talk about this. This is you got this. This is all you, buddy. So
Thank you.
I've never talked about this. So yeah, heavy prescriptions of prednisone and cortisone. Like I'm talking zombie. They were trying. I don't know what it was, but they told me if I went off it, I would die within 3 months. They told me I don't plan on living past the age of 18, and I'll never have children. And so I had built in this fears from doctors, and my mom did. Again, my mom's an angel doing the best that she could with the conditions that she had in her life, and so I had to go through this process again. What built me? All these stories is because of who I am today. I'm a protector. I'm a warrior for Christ. Jesus is my homeboy. You know what I mean? All these things that come into my life where I am today is because of the trials and tribulations that I've been through, and graduate or going through that as a child, and then rejecting it. Right? I said, well, if I'm going to die, let's try 90 days. 90 days came and went, didn't die. Right? And so 18 years old came, didn't die. I had kids. I called up Dr. Conte from UC, and I told him, you know what? I got some real resentments. And he goes, did you quit taking your medicine? I said, I haven't taken that shit for years. He goes, well, you're probably going to die in the next couple of years. I think you should come in and see me. Oh, my God. That was it. I never had to reach out to him again. But so those things were heavy. So being arrested was like, and then all the older guys that I hung around thought it was cool. Right. And that's another problem, too, is wanting to be like the older generation. They go to county jail. They go into juvenile hall. I went to juvenile hall. Then all of a sudden they are older. They're going to county jail. They went to county jail. Oh, I need a county jail story, and then they go to prison. No, I need you know what I mean? This following following the wrong footsteps model, but I can tell you who I am. So I always talk about the 13-year-old boy within.
Yeah.
I have this huge, great, magical relationship with this 13-year-old boy within, right? And this whole time of my life, he's always been there. He's been the only one to support me. He's been the only one telling me, who cares what everybody else says, you can do this, right? You're gonna make something out of yourself. And when I'm in those worst times of my life, that boy comes up and pats me and gives me a hug, kiss on the cheek, and says, we got this. Still today, I have this beautiful relationship with this person inside, and it's a great relationship. It really is. And yeah. So yeah,
So
there's all kinds of.
Patrick, take me to the high school part, because when you were getting some deer to have a good time and party on the weekends, as you said, when sometimes the cops would find it, and then you would have, hopefully something you could sell. Give us a scope into it because sometimes people are like, oh, maybe you should, you're at the time it was selling drugs. Today it is selling something that, is completely different concept.
Yeah.
We're going to get into that later. But like, as a young kid in high school, what was the amount that you were making at the time? Because I think this gives us some perspective on why it would be worth it to be able to go through the things that you're going through.
I could and back then I was born in 69, 79, 79, 83, maybe 82, 83. I'd make $100 to $200 a day on a good day selling weed, which was crazy money back then.
Yeah.
Right. I didn't have a problem supporting myself. So I remember I used it as a side hustle, and I always had a job.
Yeah.
I bought I started my first plumbing company at the age of 18, and I bought my first house at the age of 19, and I never went to school. Okay, so what does that say for, really what we are at? All my friends growing up there, they didn't buy houses for, 20 years after me, 15 years after me. I was already so far beyond because of that. And yeah, so there was, and it was seasonal money. I didn't always have it, so it's not like every day I showed up and sold weed. But if I had a good harvest, I had a few months of selling some weed for some extra cash.
What do you wish that people knew about the soil that their food or their water is in right now? And if they knew it, that they would think a little bit different?
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, here it goes. So everybody listening to this, I always like to vision things. I throw stuff on the board. This is it, right? So let's just take San Francisco. How much wrapping paper at Christmas do you think is in the Bay Area that goes to the municipality dumps every Christmas? Just think of the volume of wrapping paper in the Bay Area, right? Or wherever city, Phoenix, I'm in Phoenix here. Now think about where that wrapping paper came from. Of course, it came from China. Okay, so it's been on a barge, it's been shipped over. You look at the carbon footprint of that, right? That's going out there, the exhaust and the contaminants coming from that. But imagine what the colors and the inks are made of. Imagine all the gold and silver stuff, what actually that is. Okay, and now the volume of wrapping paper, and where does it go? It goes in your garbage can, it goes in the recycle can. Now, where does that recycle can go? It goes to the municipality green waste dump sites. In theory, recycling is great, but you have certification programs, OMRI, CDFA, that go through this whole composting, testing of where they're supposed to be, and they certify this stuff organic. Okay, it's so toxic, it's crazy. Now let's just go to San Francisco and let's see, what does a street sweeper pick up? There you go, Kelly. Since no one else is out there listening, I can hear him with the answer. What would a street sweeper pick up in San Francisco, Kelly?
I don't even want to know.
Let's talk about it. Radiator fluid, oil, feces, lots and lots and lots of feces, but syringes, pharmaceuticals, some leaf matter, garbage, lots of plastic. And one of the worst, most toxic things that come off the streets into the street sweeper is actually the 3-tab roofing, the little sand that's on a roof on tar that when the rain hits, it rolls down and it falls off and it goes down the drain pipes and it ends up in the gutters. That stuff is so contaminated with oil, right? Saturated oil. And so street sweeper takes all that, backs up into the green waste compost dump site that Omri is going to certify it organic, and they dump it in there and they compost it. It's a racket. It's a pay-to-play racket. So now, where does that compost go that's now organic? A guy like me that's a soil producer, compost producer, we buy it all up. It goes to all the organic vineyards in Napa County and Alexander Valley and Sonoma County. It goes to all the pear orchards. And this is in every region in every state for municipality green waste. All the plastics that's in there, there's so much microparticles of plastic, PFA chemicals, which is rancid across the whole world right now. It's crazy, toxic. So all those things are certified organic. And now the I call it the mafia, which is our it's waste managements that are out there. You have to pay them to take the garbage, then they make it into an organic substance and they sell it back to you, and now you're eating your food grown in it. So going in how dirty food is, and make America healthy again, movement is so important to talk about these, because nobody really talks about how contaminated. Yeah, you go to the organic store and you go to the produce section and you're looking at Sprouts or whatever it is, and you're in the organic section. Those are all certified, government certifications on those, and those are 80% organic at best, because they don't test for the things they should be testing about, and they don't talk about the things that they should be talking about. It isn't about organics and fertilizers and the inputs you put into it in real beyond organic farming, regenerative style. It's about the biological assessments with fungal that make real organic, the way Mother Nature and God intended it to be. And so this has been my fight since my hands were in the soil and my first memory. I knew what my calling was. I know what my passion was. I know 100% focused on my purpose. And I used to scream and wonder, how do I get there and what's the next step? And with God in my life, it doesn't matter, because He's delivering on my journey. I just need to show up every day. And right, so what's going to happen tomorrow? Greatness. What's greatness look like? Whatever God puts in front of me. I mean, really, that's how it goes.
Now, when we think about that, like when somebody hears it and they hear about the soil and the organic, there's been that thought for years, as far as something certified organic, but what does that actually mean? What can a person do? Like, what can a person that's listening right now, what can they do that would help, their
Love
consumption?
Love this question. Okay, so let's talk about food. Okay, even organic food that makes it. Let's talk about a melon. It's melon time out in Arizona. So you're seeing melons starting to come through the grocery store in Southern California and everywhere else. First off, you need to know what season it is. If you see a melon in San Diego, Southern California, Arizona in the middle of January, it's shipped from somewhere. Okay, so we're going to go back on that in a second. But so when we're talking about nutrient dense food, the density, the nutrients, if I take that melon and I cut it off the vine and I stick it I stick it in a truck and I stick it on a barge and I send it all the way over to you, and you get it 45 days to 60 days after that, the value of nutrients is barely anything in. The nutrients deplete immediately when the plant is cut for harvest. Super important, because now when you're going through your grocery store, you kind of want to look at local seasoning if you're looking for nutrient dense food to feed your microbiome and start feeding your health. You want to go seasonally into your zone. But even more so, to answer your question, is get to know your farmer. These farmers are struggling. Now let's talk about the guy that's growing I'm here in the Phoenix Valley, the guy that's growing that melon. So he was told at the beginning of this year what he was going to have to sell it for to grocery stores, because there's a broker and a distributor in the middle of it, and that's the guy making the money, right? The grocery store is making the money. The farmer never makes the money. He's told he's going to be paid 50 cents a pound, or whatever that might be, whatever cents it is a pound. Now that farmer's saying, oh my gosh, I don't know how we're going to make it this year. We're going to have to lessen all the inputs. We're going to have to make it less organic, but still get through the certification program. We're going to have to really figure out how not to pay people or have qualifying people doing qualifying jobs. And that farmer is suppressed. Now he has to do all the risk. He has to grow that melon for 6 months. It gets to the distributor. The distributor's now making $2.50 off that melon, and the grocery store is making another couple dollars off that melon. Hypothetically, I don't know exactly, but percentages wise, so much more. And then if the certification programs are on the farmer and saying, well, I didn't see it. Okay, so this might be a lettuce. This has just happened. Lettuce farmer that's producing 10 different varietals of lettuce. And then all of a sudden this person had 11 varietals in there. Okay, so he brought 11 varietals into it. The certification program said you never registered the 11th. We're going to fine you. Now all of a sudden that farmer gets fined, and he's making even less money for what? Providing good food, right? And so how do we get away from that? For one, we support local. Mm. And in supporting local, you have to go with what is seasonal food as well. You won't, you have to get we all want to go to have, we want to have broccoli, potatoes. Let's not talk about potatoes as the most contaminated thing in the world right now. We can get into that, but yeah, potatoes, carrots, and roots. But the farmers are the one that's struggling. So a lot of these farmers, but you can go to a farmer's market, and you look for the farmers that deliver the food, the farmers that are growing. There's in the farmers market, one out of every 10 farmers is those that produce their own product to sell at the market. The rest of them are all brokers. Okay, again, we're in the broker game, buying it for as cheap as we can. We want to get access into the most nutrient-filled, dense food and bring it home to us. And we want to support that farmer, and that farmer should be getting $4 or $5 for that melon. Right? He should be making money and able to live okay and be able to put nutrients and start working on. You can't even test your soil because it costs $500 to do that. All these fees are just compounded on the farm. So to answer your question, I went on a long tangent, but trying to go down that rabbit hole a little bit with everybody, is at the end of the day, the farmers that are doing it correctly are the ones that are getting the shaft. And it's so true. And the other thing with certification programs is you're not allowed to have claims for biological assessments. So with me in growing and soil, I am not worried about fertilizer, right? In minerals, I test for that, and I understand that. But the available biology that's in the soil will take anything that's not available to the plant to uptake it and break it down into an available substance for the plant to systemically uptake it. So biology, so if I'm making claims on labeling and I'm saying, yeah, I have my fungal and bacteria is super balanced, that's what you want in really healthy living soil, you can't make those claims because the certification programs will fine you and take you out of their certification. So the farmers that are really doing it right like that, you have to seek them out. They're around you. They're around everybody, but they don't get the opportunity to play because their food is too beyond organic. I mean, come on, man. It's crazy.
What about and it's challenging because you're hearing it and thinking like, wow, we all would love to be able to do the right thing, right? And then there's the side of convenience. and there's the side of like, hey, I've got 2 kids, I've got 15 minutes. It's in between soccer practice and whatever. I got to head to the store and I got to get some vegetables quick. I don't have time to wait for the farmer's market. How can we get through that challenge? To be able to, because you're a real time guy. Like that's what I've loved about you since I've met you is, you not only have theory, but you actually put action to it, which I think is amazing. What could a person do in that real life situation?
So, Craig, this is awesome questions. Nobody talks like, I love this actually. So here's the solution. You find your local farmer, right? First, you find your local farmer that is producing really, if you go up to the farmer's market and you're going through and you find, oh yeah, I grew this food, then you just ask them, what type of biology and fungal do you have in your soil? What are you growing with? You'll either have a conventional farmer that uses synthetic that won't be able to answer the question and start looking towards the next person because he doesn't have answers. Or you'll find a guy like me that'll all of a sudden start doing backflips because you're asking these type of questions. That's your farmer when you got a guy like me doing backflips. And most likely he has farm boxes. So this is what I do. I go to Rhino Farms, used to be Reba Farms out in Queen Creek, regenerative farmer. Love this guy. He's built an oasis, a jungle oasis out in the middle of the desert, with banana trees, with everything. His food is so awesome. And so I get 2 farm boxes every week. I order 2 farm boxes and I pick them up on Saturday, or I'll pick them up on Sunday. But usually on Saturday I'll go, and he goes to farmers market, so I can go pick him up at the farmers market or go to his farm and pick it up. And so I have my week's worth of vegetables. I get raw goat milk, goat milk, which tastes super good. It's raw milk is super important. It really is for you, as long as it's not bad raw milk or you don't store it too long. So it feeds the soul, and it feeds your microbiome, which is most important. And so with him, I take my farm boxes, and it's always a lot of stuff. There's like too much stuff. Beet tops with beets with, the tops. It's like you can't even fill your refrigerator with a lot of it up. So I'll cut it up, and I'll make Amy and I and the kids will. I make some really great dishes, seasonal dishes. That's the other thing. The boxes come seasonally, so you really never know what you're going to get. It's not the same thing of going to McDonald's and eating the same thing, and that's the menu. The menu changes, which is the exciting part to all this. It's fun to turn on some Al Green in the kitchen and get down in the kitchen and start making stuff up, right? I love this. And so everything at the end of the week that's left over in my refrigerator from the farm boxes, which is a lot, I put into my Instapot with some rice and some chicken, anything I got left over for the week in the fridge. And I cook that down and I make dog food for my dogs, nutrient dense dog food for my dogs. I'll add it as a topper to their food when I give it to them, or feed them direct, depending on how much that I have, because the food that your animals get is not nutrient dense at all. It's complete opposite of that. So now I'm adding value back into my animals, and I'm getting rid of the waste without wasting it. Super easy process. So yes, you don't have to go. Every once in a while, you're going to be late. You got soccer kids. You're going to be doing this. But we talk about patterns a lot, Kelly, and breaking patterns. There's something super sexy about breaking patterns and coming up with ones like this.
Yeah,
this stuff feels good when you are making a dinner like this for your family. It feels good as a parent to be able to feed this type of stuff to your family, when you're thinking about it consciously. And then all of a sudden, you're not going out for fast food, 5 times a week. You're going out twice a week. And then your conscious is starting to work. Do I really want that dead food that has absolutely no value? Or maybe I can just throw something together really quick in the kitchen before it all goes to dog food at the end of it. It feels good.
What's the solution too? Because let's go back to the farmer part, right? So with the farmer part, you were talking about a $500 fee that they would have to be able to test the soil. They've already got a broker telling them they're going to make 50 cents or whatever it is. So they're constricted. How can How can we solve that challenge? Because if everyone had Big Rootz Soil, right? If every farmer had Big Rootz Soil, number one, we'd probably be doing this podcast, from Mars right now. But also there would be so many like ancillary benefits from that all over the place. But how do we get there?
I mean, okay, so I don't want every farmer to have Big Rootz Soil. Big Rootz Soil is if you're growing, if you're doing cannabis in beds or you're growing vegetables in your backyard or your patio, it's expensive soil. It works really well. It's water only. It's super healthy for you. Super clean. I mean, I test for GMOs, pesticides, herbicides, all these unknown toxicities that nobody talks about, right? Heavy metals. Like I'm the guy that's known for heavy metals, and that's something I really talk about. So your solution to that is easy. So I use things like, I have concepts with fertilization of using biology. I can convert 1,000 acres of farmland that was grown industrial style synthetic uh, cultivation that's depleted, and I can bring back that nutrient into those 1,000 acres, no problem. It take a couple cycles, a couple years to really bring it back, but I can bring it back. It's not with Big Rootz Soil; it's with other products and easier. I can do a lot. Like it's like you have water issues, right? You don't have enough water for your crops. I could drop that down to 10% for you with 2 years, no problem. Less than 2 years. It's a whole different types of regenerative cultivation and farming practices, and it's scary for these big farmers across the world to adapt into it. But now with the cost of synthetic fertilizer, the pricing is so high they aren't, again, the farmer's not making any money because the broker's stealing it all and the stores are making all the money, and the farmer, his cost of fertilizer has gone up, but his price per melon is going down. It's broken system, right? So it almost feels like we're trying to put our farmers out of business across the country so we can start supplying food from all these other third world countries. It's insane.
Let's go, Patrick, let's go back to the cannabis part, because this is very interesting to me, because when you were 8 years old and you learn about this, you learn about it through your entrepreneur mind. This is something that's illegal. And if I would have told you at 8 or 11 at your first, when you threw the plants on top of the roof and ran out and thought you were going to come back a couple hours and have your plants, and they found them a couple hours later, if I would have told you at some point you're going to be able to sell this just the same as somebody buying a beer at the store, and sometimes a little easier, you probably would have thought like, oh my gosh, how could this thing that was so criminalized become something that's such an industry? How has that, how is that for a mind shift for you?
I mean, that's another good question. You've got great questions, Kelly. But I have to say, my stance is there's no segregation in agriculture. And I'm going to say that one more time for those that want to hear it again or are willing to listen, because it's super important. There is no segregation in agriculture. Plants save lives. Plant botanicals across the board save lives. The only time plant botanicals don't save lives is when man starts spraying chemicals and pesticides and ruining the soil and making the healthy part of plant botanicals unhealthy. So it's super important to know that. So going in with me in cannabis, I always get put in this cannabis box all the time, but that's not the position or the place that I am. That's not my future at all. It's not where I want to be. I don't want to build the biggest cannabis companies anymore. I was the first micro license given in the state of California. It was very difficult. But the reason why I voted and fought for Prop 64, which I did, even though it turned out, I read the bill, it was a joke. I know the detriment. I know the government got involved and took all the money and everybody went out. I got all that. But the reason why I went for it and I was into it is because before that, it was the 215 movement put on by Dennis Perone and other activists out of San Francisco during the AIDS epidemic, where cannabis was the only thing giving reliable symptoms and allowing people to have these, to go through AIDS and all this pain, going through all these AIDS and all this pain. It was something that they needed through then. And Dennis Prohn put on the Medical Act, which was Prop 215. So Prop 215 in, I forget what year that came about. But anyways, it was in the early 2000s, I think, or it could have been right around there. I can't remember offhand. But what that ended up doing is it allowed for people to grow up to 99 plants. Okay, so all of a sudden, this became the drug dealer's world. We can grow all this weed under this 215 movement. We can spray all of this pesticide and contaminants on it. We can package up these tens of thousands of pounds and sell them all across the country to everybody as medicinal under the 215 movement. That stabbed me in the heart. And so I fought that. I fought that tooth and nail. That was the reason going into cannabis is because cannabis started testing for things like aspergillus, E. coli, pesticides, herbicides, and all these things. And testing for me was so important. And to go back to bridge building 101, where I came from with the law enforcement, I have letters. I was expunged from many felonies, and I had the Sonoma County Sheriff and the chief of police in Cloverdale go to court for me and stand up for me and say that I'm a stellar citizen and I am for the right cause of everything. These are stuff. I built bridges in law enforcement because of educating. The chief of police he died from cancer, 8 rounds of cancer. A great friend of mine, he had throat cancer from the walkie-talkie on his neck for all the years of walkie-talkie. Okay, that's where his cancer came from. And I was helping him medicinally. He was a great friend of mine. I got arrested in it was like 2011. He came to me, and I'm on the board of directors for the Boys and Girls Club. I'm a longtime Lions member. I'm a builder developer. I don't need cannabis money. I've been a millionaire multiple times in my life, but this plant, plant botanicals has always been something that I made a stance for. And he came to me and said, "Look, I don't understand you. Like, you're not like the typical drug dealer. You have huge garden centers. You're donating soil to the garden clubs. You've got food programs and culinary programs going out to high school. Yet you're getting arrested for cannabis, right?" And he goes, "Why?" And I said, "Because this plant is part of the plant that's going to save lives. And it needs a front man. And I do a good job at it. And I'm never going to give up on it. These are the reasons why." We went over. He stood up. He reached his hand across the bench to me and said, "How can I help you?" And it was mind blowing at that time. And in 2015, him and I wrote the first ordinance in the world in the city of Cloverdale, California, before Prop 64 legal cannabis came in. And it said no chemical or pesticide use in cultivating cannabis within the city limits.
Wow.
It was huge. It's like mind blowing to ever get there. And that went in and got voted, and got voted in. And it was absolutely life changing. And then like the city itself, city engineer, the city manager, and council members. When I first started, it was a 5 out of 5 no vote for cannabis. Then it went to 4 out of 5 no vote. And then they came to me and said, "Okay, well, if you can get your constituents in this city to approve you, then you'll have something to say." I said, no problem. I put Initiative P on the ballot, P as in pot, right? Initiative P on the ballot in Cloverdale, California, and I got over 70% approval from the people living inside of the city to move cannabis to the next level, pre-Prop 64 legalization in California. So I established that whole city with solventless extraction, distribution, and all this stuff, and got the city ready. So when the law came down and said cannabis is legal, my city and myself were the first licenses given in the state of California because of the work that was performed. And I never hid. I've always been vocal. I've always used no segregation in agriculture and that message. When you have a Sonoma County sheriff You know, he's on videotape with me in my facilities and everything, becoming, you know, these people, this the chief of police is Cloverdale, who passed away, the Sonoma County Sheriff, great friend of mine, still in my life today. When you have those people that were protecting your integrity and seeing really what you're doing, I can say that's considered winning, you know, and building a team of bridges. And that's what the whole world needs in everything. We talk about religious wars, we talk about everything going on. It takes the warriors out front to make a difference and willing to sacrifice themselves for the greater good of others.
What about the other side too, Patrick? Because I want to talk about this because I think most of the time people don't speak on this side. They'll talk about obviously the benefits, things like that. There are people out there that are saying, you know, hey, it is a drug, whatever it is. There's the argument back and forth. Is there any negative effects to it? Because you hear about, you know, unsubstantiated claims of, oh, well, it's a gateway. There's gateway to it, all these things. Is there any, like, is there any negative side to it at all as far as the cannabis world?
Totally. Yeah, I mean, children. There's lots. First of all, there has to be campaigns, and I tried to bring to the high schools campaigns because all these kids are smoking vape pens at the school and educate children to the. I mean, it's already proven that you're you're not you're not, your brain is still developing until you're in your early 20s. So kids and cannabis is not a good thing. Kids and any drugs is really not a good thing, but it goes with cannabis as well. And unfortunately, it's selected a cool thing with kids now. So that's a problem to address. How to address that? The other side isn't willing to talk about it. They just want it. When you tell a child, no, you can't do something, what is a child going to do? You need to have a corrective, you know, maybe I was trying to produce a campaign where they had shirts that were cool shirts that had slogans on them. It's like, you know, I forget what the slogans, we had some really good ones, not like just say no, but it was some cool stuff, right? A campaign and a thing to talk about in the auditorium with the children and get them hyped on this, because a child under peer pressure is going to, if you're in a high school and you're in a car with, you know, let's say 5 or 6 people, and that you've never smoked weed before and you're in the middle in the back seat, you know, that kid is peer pressured into smoking that whether he wants to or not, because he's going to be called a little pussy. He's going to be, all these names are going to come. They're going to tease him forever, right? So what ammunition can you give those kids, right? You got to make their stance cooler than the stance of them, the peer pressure. Giving them the ultimatum of saying, no, I don't do it, doesn't work. Okay, showing them, you know what, man, I seen this, you know, slogan. We talk about this. We educate. You know, I represent this on my shirt, right? Like, I don't need that stuff. Like, you guys can have that. We can still be friends. It's already past that point. You know, give the kids ammunition to say no, and a cool way to deliver.
Yeah,
seriously. And that's the campaign. But the other side, the school districts and most law enforcements and cities are so afraid of that because they act like they're embracing it. You know, and really, what is the school districts really doing for our children anyways? Like, that's a whole nother show segment at this point.
well,
Right.
Patrick,
So yeah,
Patrick, it's tough too, because most of the time, like you said, if someone sees something, they don't have an actual discussion about it. They just want to say, no, it's wrong. And the moment that you say that it's wrong, I mean, maybe the shirts say, you know, I'm waiting till my brain develops till I get high. I'm just joking with you. I'm kidding with you. But also too, to understand, like you were talking about, and I realized this as Secret Knock with you when I was there, is you made sure that people understood that this is not just about cannabis. This is about agriculture as a whole. And that really, Patrick, blew my mind. I want to ask you a couple questions because you alluded to it earlier. You talked a little bit about your faith, and do you find connection point too? Because I mean, the whole basis of that relationship that you're talking about is based off of soil. Seed that's thrown on the rocky ground doesn't grow. Some is thrown in the weeds and it gets wrapped up. And then the one with the fertile soil is the one that grows and exponentially grows. I'm paraphrasing, obviously, but has that been a connection point for you too?
Totally. I mean, you just said it. Like, like, how do I even answer that? You pretty much said the answer on that. God is if the question. What is the actual question? Is the question is how is God working in my life from that point to where it's at today?
How did he show, like, because most of the time, here would be the story.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm 8 years old. I learned that
Yeah.
the seeds are falling out of the zigzag, and I
Yeah.
see an opportunity. I then start
Yeah.
growing. I become at the time, we can call it a drug dealer, and I start cultivating this. It's a side hustle. I do the thing. I get arrested, early on. I get arrested later on. I gain my stripes. I do these things. And then bang, here comes God into my life. And I shave the beard, cut the hair, put on a bow tie, become corny, and then spread this message to the world that nobody wants to hear. This is the time. This is where most people's story, that's the way that most people see it. But you became cooler. You became cooler. And now you have an even stronger platform, and you're not telling anyone that this is wrong. You just want to educate people. But how did he deal with you? Like, where did you meet him, and how did he deal with you?
So I think as a young kid, God was definitely in my life. Okay. How do I shorten this up? I'm also in recovery. I've been in recovery from alcoholism and drug addiction for my whole life. The first time I ever went to AA meeting was at the age of 13 years old. Okay, I went there because I was homeless and I was cold and I wanted a cup of coffee, and because the older people that were in my life teaching me how to be a good drug addict were now drug addicts and needed help. So they were in the rooms of recovery. So that was their seed in life that God dropped on me. So when I was homeless and I decided to go into a meeting, instead of being judged in the rooms of recovery, I was loved and I was hugged and I felt warm. And at that point, it's the same thing I used from that day to where it is today is the first three steps in recovery is I can't, he can, and I think I'll let him. And I knew that I was placed in those rooms at the age of 13 because God needed me to be there to become something, right? So that was where my seed was planted in the rooms of recovery. Of course, I've been in and out of the rooms of recovery my whole life, with 10 years, a couple 6 years, 4 years, multiple 4 years, but the toolbox I got from recovery was great, because then when I went out, I knew I had to get back in because I had the roadmap of recovery already built in me, thanks to God. So going on in life, this relationship with Christ was taught in a different value. It was in the rooms of recovery, but it was never the deep connection that it is today. And it's just, back then it was like I had to, I'm just going to say how it is today and how it was then. It was get on my hands and knees and pray to this figure that was greater than me. And I can go find him in a church, or I can go over here, and I have to live by this set of rules in order for him to recognize me and be loved. And what I found out is Job and all these other guys in the Bible, they were just like me. They're knuckleheads, right? Troublemakers. And so what I know now is that God selects those people of character like me that he can mold in his likeness and teach in a different path than having to go through a religious value to get to him. And it's this homeboy relationship of him sitting right next to me. He's my best friend. He laughs at me. He teases me. He slaps me on the butt. And even more so than any of that, and this is just my relationship keeps growing as now. The newest thing that I've really been working on or finding out, it's great. This unraveling this onion just keeps coming. is that everything I want to be in a father for my kids, God wants that, is that for me. Everything. Everything. Oh, I messed up today. Oh, it's okay. I love you anyways. We're going to get up tomorrow. We're going to do it again. I believe in you, son. Right? Oh, man, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm out of money. I can't pay the rent. It's okay. You're going to believe in faith and you're going to let me take care of it. And we're going to walk through this hand to hand together. And if you don't have a house tomorrow, at least we got each other. Okay? These are the things that God is for me today. This is a direct relationship to Holy Spirit, Christ, God. It's so direct. But when I put the world in between that and broke that, which was most of my life, I never had this, right? I never had, get my hands right, never had this. It was always something in the middle of it that I had to become this to get to this.
Wow.
But I'm telling you, man, and I cuss, and I'm gonna say it. Jesus, my fucking homeboy, like straight up, my best friend, my confidant. He's the one that laughs at me on the daily for the stupid things I do, and the biggest lessons that I learn is the do-overs he gives me. Okay, you didn't learn that this time. Let's redo it. Here's another year of the same shit situation because you didn't learn it. I'm going to put you through a whole another year. Right. So what, and so what, from where I was there to where I am now, I'm completely living in faith. I don't live in anxiety and fear anymore. I don't worry about tomorrow. I made mistakes yesterday and today is greatness. And if I just walk into the world today and share, right? Like I think I told you what my daily routine is. I get up in the morning. I like to go outside, except in Arizona, it's too hot in the mornings that sometimes, but I have a journal and I write gratitude list. First, I start and I write just most people would think are the dumbest things. Oh my God, the bird chirping, you got a pool behind you, the lights are on, you have a house to come in, the key works in the door, right? I have a car, right? I have a job, I'm working, all these my kids. Actually, Kelly, you're on my gratitude list today. You're on my gratitude list today. So, and all these things. And I would hear entrepreneurs or keynote speakers, they say, get a gratitude list, at least get 3 things on there. Shoot for 3 things. I'm telling you, man, don't stop at 3. Just go until you can't go anymore. Because I had one of my mentors, which happens to be Steve Harvey of all people, right, who really changed my life. And a lot of it gave me a lot of not. He's the one that taught me that you don't have to be so versed in Scripture and know everything to have the relationship with Christ. God uses people in your life for these little gems. And what I heard him say one day, and I'm pretty sure it was him. It could have been somebody else, but if you woke up and God gave you the only thing you put on your gratitude list, what would that look like? Immediately, my heart falls, everything falls out and said, I'm so grateful I write a gratitude list first and foremost. What if I didn't even write the gratitude list? 2 is, well, let's look at my gratitude list. So now I go into my journal and I start reading it and I go back months and I'm singing through it and I'm like, my kids, my dogs, the lights, the house, a job, tomorrow's taken care of, faith, 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 Holy Spirit, Holy Spirit, Holy Spirit, God, 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 gratitude, gratitude, gratitude. Those are the only things I need in life. That is it. The simple things are all we need. If the world ended tomorrow, that gratitude list is all I need. Everything's on it, right? Powerful, right? So I write a gratitude list every day, and you're on it today. So you're on it, buddy. Then I go into the next part, and actually, this is what Steve Harvey taught me as well. Ask not, receive not. Like I've read that in the Bible. I've heard that my whole life, but I never heard somebody drill it into me. Ask not, receive not. So the next thing is, what am I asked from God? I write down, ask from God, underline it. And I write down, I want to make 180,000 cash plus this year. I'm going to be on TV. All these things that I have a meeting today. Today's Kelly's on it, and we're going to have a great podcast. God, you're going to talk through me. You're going to deliver some things that are going to go to the last thing on my list. Which the last thing on my list is what's my give? I write that down. What's my give for today? How am I going to reciprocate God everything He does for me? I'm gonna talk to somebody about my life and how He's changed.
Wow.
And I'm going to give that to him. So super powerful stuff that has changed my life and has really changed the people around me. Most people that weren't meant to be in my life don't want to hear any of this, and they're gone. And now I'm gathering these new people in my life that I can actually reciprocate and help, and they're giving to me, and it's this great relationship now of growth. Greg Reed's one of them, right? Greg Reed came into my life, and I don't know how it all ended up. I was in New York. I was doing a Soil King Legends of Legacy panel guest, which I brought worldwide cannabis people from all over the world and had in Niagara College, which is unheard of, right? Here I am getting paid to go put this panel together at a college, and Greg heard that I was up there, and he flew out to see me. And the moment I met him, it was magical. You know, him being 37 years in recovery, right? So, and me being my whole life in recovery, we share the same toolbox, and we're the same people, and we met each other at a different level, and those are the people that God brings into my life to make me a better person and to deliver more of what my purpose is on this planet. You know, and from that point on, you're in my life, and I surrounded myself with a new group of people that are just wonderful. Like when we're sitting there in a knock, and you look around at how many couples there are, power couples,
Yeah.
and you look around at how much God has influenced the individuals in those rooms. Most rooms you go into, it's like 10% or less, right? We're 90% in these rooms of how God delivered us into a new world, into a new life. And it all comes with surrender. Everything's backed by surrender, right? And being in the 80-20 rule. That's the other one that's really good to me. People say, yeah, God, are you put into God, God puts in you. No, that's not how God works. He laughs at me and pushes me back, tells me to get back to work, right? If I'm willing to put 80% into my relationship with God, He can put 100%, but He's only going to give me 20%. He's going to make me earn it, right? And going through the last, I went through a business fallout, bankruptcy. I lost in the last 3.5, 4 years. I had a collapse on one of my business. I lost a $10 million company, $3.5 million overnight, and it put me into suicide. Right, it put me into being a survivor of suicide, and so many things happened through that moment. I had to break down my companies, the biggest soil yard and garden center in Northern California. I had to revamp myself. I had to remove myself. I didn't know what I had an empire that was built that was never going to fall apart. I didn't have to work ever again. And then God woke up one day and said, well, I woke up one day and God said, we're going to kick this foundation right. You know what? You either live in my castle or I'm destroying yours. And He destroyed mine. Right. And I had to go through the part of life. And this is why I do my build for this podcast is we talk about this stuff. This is the things that people need to hear is during these moments of catastrophic failure in life, whether it's relationships, whether it's death in families, business collapses. I fought so hard for the first year and a half to rebuild my business. Right, I'm kicking in the door that God closed, and there's doors open behind me that I'm refusing to go into. And God's like, "You're just not learning, man. You're living in anxiety and fear. You haven't learned anything about me or faith. You trust zero in me. Now you're going to go through another year of hell, back to another year of hell until finally I was willing to surrender, turn around and ask for help and give all glory to God at that moment. And walk a different direction. And instead of worrying about how that direction is going to look, just believe that God's going to lay out that yellow brick road, and I just need to walk along. He's going to put the purposes in line, and that's what he's done in my life to coming into meeting you and doing all this stuff. And my life is totally great because if I still rebuilt that same castle that was destroyed by God, I'd still be living that miserable life. And right now I have so much more to give, to receive, and monetary contributions. Money doesn't really matter when you really start believing in faith. It's good to have. God wants me to have it. I write it in my wants, right? I need money. I write it down. I need money today. I got bills coming up. Boom, it's delivered. But in order for, God to be at this level of my life, it's full faith. Like faith is so, I'm younger, I'm stronger, I'm wiser, I'm more powerful, I'm a warrior for God. So yeah, I mean, there's so much glory to give at this level. And, what's my reciprocal to him? We're sitting here talking about this guy who was an egomaniac who made it to the top, super successful. I'm a builder developer. I've made it to, '08 housing turn, a millionaire at the age of in my 30s, didn't go to high school. You know what I mean? Collapsing, rebuilding, collapsing again. And here I am on this whole new journey right now that is super excited. And my journey right now is to change the world one plant at a time with responsible farming practices worldwide. And I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that.
It's incredible to be able to hear you, man. I started the whole podcast because of my two kids. We have since branched off into a couple different shows. I told you about it. We have one that's called Inchstones. That's 15 to 20 minutes. We do it on Proverbs, the corresponding proverb, corresponding day. It's a commentary. We also do one where you'll be getting a call, which it's called "You Have to Meet My Friends," where I go live and I call my friends randomly, and they have no idea they're on the podcast until they're actually on.
Awesome.
But the original show was this show, and it was interviewing some of the most iconic people in the world, because I never wanted my kids to worship idols. I wanted them to be inspired by icons like yourself. So what advice would you have for Maddox and McKenna? And if you could use both their names, it would be awesome.
Well, to Maddox and McKenna. McKenna?
Yep.
Is that your name?
Yep.
So Maddox, and what good names. Maddox. First off, man, you're the name like Maddox. Like, how can you go wrong there? Embrace that. McKenna, come on. Like, so I would say the advice is clear as day. You have so much attention from direction from all these adults coming at you, trying to lay out your path, right? Learn how to understand and feel your soul through your gut, and your gut is going to deliver. God's going to work right through your heart, and he's going to deliver the feelings of action and what direction to move that into. And so embrace your inner being, embrace your inner spirit, embrace the Holy Spirit within you. And when you question your authority, whatever it's coming in or a direction, it might not be the best way for you to go, but you're going to feel it inside, because God's going to have that relationship with you, and you're going to feel it. The relief, it's going to come off your shoulders. Yeah, this is a really good way to go. This is a really good direction in life to head to. Versus if you're feeling all like, oh, I don't really like that. It doesn't really feel that good. Like, I don't know. I'm just going to do it because dad or uncle says I should go there. The teacher said I should go this direction. Man, question the authority on that. Feel it, right? Have that relationship with God and that communication with him. And he'll let you know. He'll let you know. So that would be a good one. It's just question everything, and then come up with a good relationship. Feel the answers inside you, and then talk to your parents about that. You got a great father right here, so he understands that. Hopefully, that was some good direction.
Absolutely.
Right, tell my kids.
It's incredible, because if you a person that's listening right now, that listener or watching, if you go back, what you'll see is that, you're living this, right? So you talked about it right towards the end. You said that, there was God's direction for your life. There was the world that would come in. And if you let the world in, to the extent of the percentage of what you would let the world in is how much less you would get blessed on the outside, right?
Yeah.
And if you think about that part of it, as far as the soil, that God is that pure soil, and the world is the contaminants that you told us about that go into it from the street sweeper, from all those things. And it's incredible, because you're so congruent with your message, and you live that. And even when I said that you're a world authority as far as soil, you were like, it's still from your heart. You're like, I don't need that. I don't need that moniker. I just want to do the right thing. And I want to applaud you at the highest, man. You're an incredible human.
Yeah. And then one thing to add to your kids, it's just like I embrace the 13-year-old boy within. That's the feeling I'm talking about. Like I have this guy inside me, that knows me and has seen all my demons, all my wrongs, help me ask for forgiveness, being humble, all the direction and things that happen to me. I go internally and I say, hey, what's up here? What do we do? Like, am I out of my league right now? I got you. You got this, man. Confidence up, pat me on the butt, send me out, right? It's like that feeling, embrace that feeling. It's God, it's yourself, it's intention. It is there. The answers are within. Definitely are. You just got to reach it. You got to understand it and hear it. Right? It talks to you.
Patrick,
Thank you for that.
you're absolutely incredible. I want to ask you in front of everyone that you'll be on the show again, because there's so many things, that there's so many more avenues that we could go down, things like that. I will obviously want to respect your time, but it has been an absolute pleasure, man. I'm going to make sure that all the links, because I know people are going to be clamoring, how can I talk to Patrick? How can I get in touch with him? We're going to have all the links in the bio. Make sure you do that. But Patrick, it has been an absolute pleasure. Stick on for a second after we close here for a second. Any last words from Patrick, the Soil King, the man, the myth, the legend?
I just want to say, just like I said, your kids, question your food. Learn how to read labeling, question your food, support your local farmers, right? And reach out to me with any questions. Like I am right here for all of you. Let's talk. Let's figure it out. We're in the same team. We're in the same league. Let's clean up the world of health and together. Let's do it.
Here's a little station identification too, guys. If you haven't been to Secret Knock, that's a place where you can meet Patrick in person and spend time with him. It's the #1 networking conference in the world that you can't go to unless you're invited. And there's 2 guys that are right in front of you that could possibly get you an invitation. So check that out. Make sure that you subscribe. Send a comment to Patrick too, because it's an incredible, incredible thing. Patrick, it has been my honor, my pleasure, and I'm going to force you to be my friend for the rest of your life. You're officially off the hot seat. Peace, love, and soul. That's supposed to trigger you like when technology doesn't work there? There we go. So I'm gonna sing us out. La-di-da-di-da-di-da.